Good afternoon, everybody. Happy Pride. So a big welcome to everybody in Dublin and to everybody watching on live stream in EMEA. 2016, is it really that easy to bring your whole self to work? Have you ever received a few average grades at university or failed something and you've overanalyzed it time and time again, wondering what went wrong? Have you ever gone to school in the morning and put your head down and not want anyone to look at you? Have you ever gotten a new haircut and it's gone a bit lopsided or it looks a bit different and you know everybody's watching you and you wish they'd stop? So Google Dublin for this year is trying to set the gold standard for culture and inclusion. So I'm very delighted that we have an external speaker with us today, Ailbhe Smyth. Ailbhe Smyth is an activist and former academic who has been involved in feminist, LGBT, and radical politics for a long time. She set up the Women's Education Research and Resource Centre and was head of women's studies at UCD, which is a university in Dublin, from 1990 until 2006, when she left the university to work independently, mainly with community women's groups and organisations. Ailbhe has lectured and written extensively about feminism, women, politics, and culture in contemporary Ireland. She's a founding member of the organisation Marriage Equality, and she was centrally involved in the victorious Yes Equality referendum campaign in 2015. Please put your hands together and welcome Ailbhe Smyth on stage.
Thank you very much, Adam, for that lovely introduction. And hello, everybody. It is such a treat to be here in Google. And perhaps I'll take my jacket off, actually. And a little bit of strip at the beginning is always a good idea, I think. We get down to the real business. Is it really that easy to bring your whole self to work? You know, I looked at this when Anam sent me her really very clear email, and I thought, I really don't think I can do this with Google, because there is a whole experience, there is a whole world of change, if you like, that separates your work experiences and mine. There's generations of change there. And I thought, maybe I'll go to the second line and see what it says under that. Take the scarf off. Right, okay, what next? Well, Gagglers are well used to this kind of thing. It said then the next line was how we cope with or bounce back from or keep going in adversity. And I thought, adversity, I know all about adversity, absolutely. So I don't have a grand theory. I don't have, expert solutions. I don't have a recipe. I don't even have tips on how you bounce back or stay resilient or whatever. All I can tell you is that a couple of weeks ago, as Andrew will confirm, I celebrated a really big birthday. I really don't want to have to say it, but my 70th birthday, and I'm still here and I'm still going strong. So something must be working somewhere along the line. And in a way, I thought maybe the most honest and true thing that I could do with you today is really tell you a little bit about what has gone on in my life, not only in relation to work, because I think maybe the first thing I would say about bringing our whole selves into work is that you have to be sort of in touch with who yourself is and have quite a clear idea about what parts of yourself might not be fitting in here or there. Whether you bring and what you bring into the workplace also, therefore, depends a lot on you, a lot on your context, your social context, your political context, your geographical context, but also it depends hugely on the nature of your workplace. And it's my impression, obviously I've never worked here, but it is my impression that Google is the kind of place that you can bring far more of yourself into than probably most of the places I've ever worked in, and probably most of the places that the majority of people in the world actually still work in. And I think that that's really a very, very important point. But before I go on to talk personally, I do want to say, echoing Adam's words, something really very important, and that is to say happy Pride to everybody here and to everybody in Google, whether you're L, G, B, T, I, Q, are I gather, allies, whatever you are, and to say that I love Pride, that I think Pride is incredibly important. I think it's important politically. I think to make a point that life is not okay for LGBTQIs here or across the world even more. Everything is not won because we did win that wonderful, glorious marriage equality victory. Everything is not resolved by that. But I also think that it's really important socially and for our communities, because and I say communities because I do think that LGBTIQ communities are several, that we interlink, that we interweave, but we're not necessarily all absolutely the same thing. And I constantly bear that in mind, that there are many, many differences between us. But I do think it's important for community, and not least because that sense of community and the importance of community is something which I think is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain in the material and physical world in the 2000s. And it seems to me that that's something that we do very, very well through our Pride celebrations, not just in Ireland, but throughout the world. So I think it's absolutely true that when I march with, all the wonderful, the beautiful, the brave, the excellent, the funny, the clever people who also march in Pride, and whatever their sexuality and however they define or we define our sexuality, I just burst with pride when I think of all of the challenges and the difficulties and the obstacles and the plain, downright horrible, damaging homophobia that so many of us have faced and go on facing in some instances in our lives. Some people much more so than others. But there is hardly, and certainly in my generation and the generation after me, there is not an LGBTIQ life that is unscathed by that homophobia. None of us have got off scot-free. I've never yet met somebody, LGBT, etc., who has said to me, of my generation, and certainly the one after me, and I do believe right down or up or across or however it is you talk about generations, there is no life that hasn't been touched in some way, and in many ways shaped and really framed by that homophobia. And just to remind myself as much as anybody else here that homophobia is quite simply a dislike, a hatred of people who are lesbian or gay or bisexual or transgender or intersex or queer. And that even to say that to yourself, even for me to say that to myself, gives me a shock every time I think of it, every time I see it. Why? Because I feel it in my body and I feel it in my bones. And however brave and however determined and however much fun we have and however much whatever, to have that frisson, to have that shake in your bones, to have that little feeling in your flesh still there, that there are people who don't like people like you, people like me, people like us, to feel that, whether it's in relation to our sexuality or any other aspect of ourselves, our ethnicity, our social class, whether we have a disability, whatever it is, that is a deeply disempowering thing. So it is incredibly important for us, I think, in a way to recognize it and to overcome that and deal with it. Because I don't know about you, but my vision or my dream for a world, and I say this as a feminist, as much as an LGBT activist, is a world where gender doesn't matter anymore, where gender doesn't determine in any way the shape of your life, where gender is not a factor that is in any way allowed to get into your bones and shape you and make you, where gender is simply neutral. And that doesn't mean, by the way, that we don't have sex. It has absolutely nothing to do with sex. So let's get that point very clear in our heads as well. A world where gender is not socially determining is it's the world I would dream of. And are we there yet, as they say in the ad? No, absolutely not. Maybe a bit closer here in this country, maybe a bit closer in some countries, but in many cases, not at all. But when I say I burst with pride, marching in Pride, there's also a part of me, and it's maybe the contrary part of me, that's saying I'm not quite sure that proud is the right word to use to describe or to define how I feel about being lesbian. I came out late. Well, I mean, I think that nowadays it would be considered rather late. I was in my 30s, although back then, way back then, it wasn't all that bizarre. I grew up without ever hearing the word lesbian. No, I didn't even hear the word gay. I mean, there was Hilton Edwards and Micheál MacLeamore, who were two theatrical personages, and we knew that they were a couple. But nobody ever said to me, oh, they're gay. And nobody ever said to me, well, you know, do you see that woman there? She's lesbian. I just had never heard them. There wasn't, we didn't have the internet, obviously. The media, you just simply, I grew up in a world which was definitionally, absolutely dead straight. A lot of it was pretty dead, but it was really, 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 really straight. So, you know, when I did come out, as I say, rather late, in my 30s, even though I kind of knew that in my bones already, that it wasn't going to be a picnic being lesbian in Ireland at the time, I was still absolutely thrilled to discover that I was lesbian. And I have to tell you, I am still totally thrilled by the fact that I'm lesbian. So it's not about being proud. I didn't do anything. I didn't achieve anything in order to be lesbian. It's not something that I deserve merit for or applause or anything. I just am lesbian, and I absolutely love it. And I love girls, I love women, and that's it. So, but I am at the same time very proud to be part of a set of communities, if you like, where we have fought so hard so that people like me and people like you can stand up and say, oh, isn't it great to be gay? Isn't it fantastic to be bi? Isn't it just brilliant to be lesbian? Frankly, I think that's the best of all, but there you go. A world where it's not yet all that easy to stand up and say I'm trans or I'm intersex. And that, I think, is true in Ireland as much as it is right across Europe, insofar as we have Europe anymore at all after today, and also in North America, in South America, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, there are a lot of difficulties. But of course, although I say I came out when I was in my 30s, I didn't really come out at all because I couldn't. I couldn't. There were people, also lesbians, who knew, and I knew, and we went to more or less the same sorts of places, and we were friends. But I couldn't come out to most of my family. Indeed, when I tried, it wasn't that they pushed me away, but the shutters came down. They didn't want to hear. They didn't want to know. It was not part of their vocabulary. It wasn't part of their picture of me as a member of their family. So for a long time, it was as if you can, you know, imagine a photograph, a family photograph, where I was in it, but with a sort of, you know, a black curtain or something, or a big black curtain pulled down over my face, so that I was in the family, but not as me, not as the whole me. And that's where the whole self thing comes in, because that was something that I struggled with for years and years and years. Eventually, most of my family did actually come round, and my parents, one way and another, my father died shortly after that, but my mother was reasonably supportive. There are other stories about that. She used to, when I would bring girlfriends, because, you know, I carried on as if I was a proper, upfront, straight-up person, member of this family. So I would arrive with the girlfriend and I would say, here's Mary Jane, or here's Patricia, whatever. And there was more than one girlfriend, as you can probably guess at this stage. And she would make an instant decision. And she used to offer the ones she liked a glass of sherry, which they never liked. And she would offer all the others a cup of tea. So that was kind of her way of grading her response to my lesbian life. So it was really very interesting. But I think my point is that although I came out, really I couldn't actually be out because they wouldn't let me be out. They didn't want me to be the thing I was. They liked what they thought was me, but they didn't like that part of me that was at that stage very centrally me, if that doesn't sound too complicated. And exactly that kind of situation was replicated in my straight friendship circles, where my, my social life just was completely went to the ground. And where in work, exactly the same. Now, I worked in UCD, which probably as a university would have been considered quite a liberal institution, but it wasn't when it came to sexuality. And people told me very specifically, and I'm thinking back now to the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 1990s, people told me, well, okay, we've no problem with you being lesbian. That was lucky, wasn't it? They'd no problem with who I was. Think about the language there. It's actually very condescending and patronizing language. But we don't advise you to come out. It wouldn't be a good idea for promotion. I was already a bad idea for promotion. I was a feminist. I was a radical. I was pro-choice. I had left my husband after 6 months of marriage because it just wasn't a good idea. So I got out before we got pinned down. Why did I get married? Because that was what girls of my middle class did in this country at the time. It didn't suit me at all. But all of those things were known about me, that I was feminist and that I was radical and that I had left a marriage. At that time, a lot of you won't know, there was no divorce in Ireland. We didn't have divorce in Ireland until 1995, I think. 2 referendums in 95. And of course, I was pro-choice, which has always been a very, very subversive thing to be in this country. So at work, I was advised not to say I was out because it would affect my promotional prospects, whereas I knew perfectly well that my promotional prospects were already right down the tubes quite a long time before that. So within a couple of years, I thought, let's do this. Let's actually all be out, all of us who are lesbians in UCD, and stop this absolute nonsense. So at that stage, I was heading up the Centre for Women's Studies, and I thought, I know what we'll do. We'll have a day specially for lesbians in the university and see how they deal with that little one. So we did, and we started Lesbian Lives, which is a conference, and now a 2 or 3 day conference that goes on every year. So I think in that instance, what I was trying to do was to say, I can't really continue in this environment unless I am able to just simply be all of myself. And that part of myself is a part that I am not ashamed of, that I am very pleased about, but I can't do this on my own. It's not just up to me. There are other people here. There are other people out there who need to be involved and included in that. And that was, in a way, I suppose, my response, but also my challenge to the place that I worked in, which was really to put it up to them, to say, we're going to have this Lesbian Lives Day or 2 days. And yes, we will be here openly in this precious environment of the university. And the wrath of God, or the president of UCD, did not fall on top of my head. What did they do? They just simply continued to ignore. It was as if it had never happened. Lesbian Lives happened the next year, same thing. It was as if that had never, ever, ever happened. And I realized then it taught me a really, really good lesson, that sometimes you really have to go right up to them and say, you have to take this on board. You can't go on ignoring this. Because if you have staff who are lesbian and students now who are lesbian, think of all the others. Think of everyone else. Think of the future. Think of what it is doing to your university, our university, that you are in denial. And that was a kind of microcosm of what was happening in this country as a whole, I think, at the time. I think that, I was very lucky that I had been, I'd had a few hard knocks at that stage. And as I say, I realized that, I wasn't exactly on the fast track to, 3 chairs and 60 million research grants, although actually things did come in the fullness of time, I'm glad to say. But I knew that I had to go out and do that, but I also knew I absolutely couldn't do it on my own. And as soon as I put the call out, just a little notice, I think it was still in the very early days of email even. Gosh, I'm so dinosauric when I think about it. It was all done by hand and little notice boards and so on and so forth, asking people to come to a meeting about running a Lesbian Lives conference. Actually, women did come along. It was quite extraordinary. And I think that then at around about that time, it was decided after Lesbian Lives that there would be a gay soc in UCD, and that actually happened. But as I say, I had, a little bit of previous adversity. There was the problem of leaving my husband, which really was a dreadful thing to do in Ireland at that time. And I had then gone on, as one does, and met another guy who I really quite fancied, and we decided to have a baby, which we did. But of course, I was still married to somebody else, and there was no divorce. And that was a mortal sin, so I was very marginalised because of that. And technically, my daughter was considered illegitimate and a bastard. And that was also something which had to be taken on. Also not entitled to my pension in the event of my early death. So always a material girl, I actually tackled that bit first to make sure that that could be changed. So that regulation was actually changed for the whole of the civil service, which I thought was very important. And then eventually illegitimacy as a category actually was taken out of our legal system. And just a bit before that, I had, I think really, it happened for all kinds of reasons, but I had quite a serious breakdown. I got anorexia nervosa and had quite a severe mental breakdown and was in hospital for 6 months. And that, of course, was also hugely, hugely stigmatized. And I think we know that mental illness is still very stigmatized in this country. And if nobody would talk about the fact that I was a feminist and lesbian, certainly, absolutely no one at all ever referred to the fact that I had had a breakdown. And when I resumed normal activities, it was, again, as if absolutely nothing had happened. Sort of eventually got over that. But you might be saying, well, why am I telling you this? Because I think there are a lot of lives like mine, actually. And I think that what people go through in our lives is often very undercover. And however open the environment we work in, there can be things that are very difficult for people to talk about. So it is, I think, easy, certainly much easier, much more. Google is a very open environment, certainly in respect of sexuality. I don't know about other things. I do know that there are other working environments where it's really difficult. People will lose their jobs if they have a breakdown. They will lose their jobs if there is a suspicion that there's mental illness. They may lose their job still, although it will never be said explicitly, if they come out as gay, and particularly if they come out as trans. So, I suppose I'm saying that we have to always look for the ways that we can do more than survive. And some of the ways that I have found are to be myself, full stop, in a way, to try always to be myself, with all the complexity that that involves, all the bits and pieces. We're never just gay, we're never just lesbian, like we're never just a woman, or just a man, or just a whatever. Our identities are so complicated, aren't they? I'm a mother, I'm a granny. And, my daughter's one set of her in-laws was a little bit shocked to think that their daughter-in-law's mother was a dyke. I mean, not her sister, but the mother. Right, okay, so what was this going to look like? And then you do the T-shirt bit and you say, this is what a lesbian looked like. And they say things to you like, oh, but you're really very nice. What did they expect? What did they think I was going to do? Eat them up, devour them? I don't know. That's just those layers of usually unspoken prejudice and bias, and fundamentally homophobia, fear and hatred of lesbians and gays and bisexuals and trans people that's still there. But I have found that it's wiser I don't know that it's easier. I don't know if it's better. It's just wiser in the long run to be completely upfront about who and what you are, and preferably to find other people roughly similar to yourself. We're all different. We're all unique. We're all wonderful and beautiful. So find somebody and somebody and somebody, as you do with the Geiglers, who's roughly similar to you, and take on the situation. It doesn't have to be in your face. It doesn't have to be confrontational. It just has to be consistent and firm and there and visible pretty well all the time. I forgot something else. I'm now actually beginning to encounter a bit of ageism. Nobody here has any idea what I'm talking about. So I won't actually talk about that. But let me just tell you that sometimes I think there's a sense in which you feel, oh my God, there's no end to what we might encounter. So you might say, just to finish up, you know, have I learned anything that might be of use to any of you? You know, I kind of very much doubt that. I think that we create our worlds. We really do. I think that for people under, roughly speaking, I'm not going to put a name, roughly there in the middle, okay, about halfway down from me, whatever. It is a very different world. But I do think that bearing in mind that people's lives, first thing I'd say, people's lives are complicated. Things can go up and down. And whatever we do, to always bear that in mind. Secondly, that there are common threads that unite us, and to hold on to those threads as much as we possibly can. And the most important thing, I think, well, two most important things are to speak up, stand up for yourself, and just keep at it. Never give up. Somebody asked me, there was sort of 50 best pieces of advice podcast thing the other day, and somebody sent me an email and said, you know, we want a photograph, we want your best advice. And I suppose they thought I'd write a paragraph. But I just put back, never give up. Because actually, I think that's really important. Whatever it is you're at, in your job, in your life, everywhere. If it's important to you, if it really matters to you, stick with it. Stand up for it. Get other people to help you, or work with them to stand up for it. Stick with it. Don't give up. Never give in. Why would we ever give in to those who would have us do something else? I'm sure you found this a bit meandering. I hope it might have struck a chord somewhere, somehow along the line. It's been really a pleasure to speak with you. I'm sure you'll have very practical questions about how to survive in the workplace to the wonderful panel who are coming on now. And I'll join the panel. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you. Oh, I have to sit up there.
So thank you very much, Ailbhe. Some very inspirational stories, and I can't wait to hear more. So guys, we're going to do a panel discussion now and Q&A. So please welcome Jennifer Kelly, who's the Vice President of the Real Estate and Workplace Services, and Andrew Hyland, who's Community Relations Manager for the data centres. So Jen, we might start with you, if you'd like to share a few of your reactions to what Ailbhe's talked about and your own thoughts.
Sure, I loved Ailbhe's talk. Thank you so much. I got a lot of laughs. I got a lot of insights. And what's great for me is, and what struck a chord with me is, I don't wake up every day and say, oh my God, you know, there's the alarm, fantastic, because I love that time of the day. But I don't wake up and say, oh, I'm a woman. I'm a woman today. I wake up every day and I'm just the same as everybody else. I get up and do all the crazy things we all have to do in the mornings. And the day turns out differently every day. So obviously I really feel that I do come to work as myself. I come to work as my whole self. And I come to work as my authentic self. And I don't mask that. I get up and I bring my daughter to school every day. And I don't apologise for that. That's a time that's really important to me. And where my first kind of tough part of the day is when some of the other moms at the gate say, would you like to go to a spin class? We're going to Insomnia for coffee. And they'll ask several people and then they'll just say, you're going to work, right? So it's straight off, yes, I am. And I feel great that I'm going to work, but there's this little judgment right there. And if I wasn't going to work, I wouldn't be going to the spin class. I just want to put that out there straight away. Because when I go home, I say to my husband, they were all off to the spin class, and he gives me the, yeah, but if you were off, you wouldn't be going. So let's just talk about that. And then I drive through the Phoenix Park, and I see all these people out jogging and, you know, pushing the kids, and then I have the other little bit of guilt, and then I just get over it and I go to work. But that for me is the biggest part, and probably why after 12 years I still love getting up and coming to work at Google, is I feel that is authentic. I come to work as me, and I don't have to make any allowances or apologies for who I am when I come to work.
And I suppose for me, myself, and the role I lead, so for the Gaglers for Dublin, I come across people who are afraid to come out at work and not be themselves because they feel that, depending on their own circumstances where they grew up or for different environments that they grew up in, they don't feel confident in doing that. But I suppose when you think about coming out, it's a difficult conversation. So would you have any difficult conversation that you've had in your life that you could share?
Yes, specific to work, I've had conversations, and I've sat on a few times when we've had career weeks and career panels, and people have said, you know, where did you go to college? What did you do? What qualified you to come to Google? And people have been quite reactionary when I've said to them, I didn't go to college, I don't have a degree. And people have looked at me, shocked first of all, or have said, how did you get hired? And they've said it not in a hurtful way, it was just in a complete shock way. And after they've said it, I've thought, oh my God, I shouldn't have said that. And I said, I just guess I was awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know, I was like, I did 5,000 interviews back in the day, 12 years ago, like everybody else did. But I came to Google with a lot of experience doing what I did, and that was part of, I guess, why I was hired. And I get, from a culture perspective, I was a fit. But that has come up numerous times, and people have even said, we'd like you to sit on the panel and say this. And that's almost, you feel like that's a judgment in itself, right? That, okay, let's put 4 people on that have degrees, and then let's get Jen, because she's the only one we know at Google. Yeah. There might be other people out there, we could set up a little group. And, you know, I'm proud that I'm here today, having not gone through the same process, but at the time it wasn't an option for me. When I left school, I needed to get a job straight away and be somewhat self-sufficient, and I did. And I think that has probably made me feel prouder about who I am today and what I've achieved today.
Woohoo, is what I say.
Can I come in there as well?
Yeah.
I've never had to come out and work because I've really been reflecting on this since you've asked me to be on the panel. I've been lucky in that sense that I've never had to come out, but I have had to be in conversations where, in order for a client to know that I'm gay, I've kind of gone, oh, well, I'm going home to my boyfriend or something like that. But similar to Ailbhe's experience, I have had that, oh my God, you're gay. Oh, I never thought you were gay, you know, and one comment, what was one comment? Yeah, you're not stereotypical, really, are you? And I'm like, you know, so there was deep, and sometimes I had to bury it. I had to bury my activist self down because I wanted to, you know, tell them that was quite offensive and that the comments weren't always welcome. But because they were a client, I had to go, oh yeah.
And Andrew, you might elaborate a bit more on that. So what does it mean for you to bring your whole self to work every day at Google?
Yeah, first thing I want to say, because when Adam said it earlier, you're all a bit lame. So I think when we say Happy Pride, you all need to scream Happy Pride, because Pride is about protest and celebration. So Happy Pride, everybody! That was much better, much better. Pride for me, bringing my whole self to work for me, especially since I've been in Google and experiencing Gaglers for the first time in terms of a group for gay people, LGBT people, I think it's absolutely marvellous. I reflected on things like Orlando and what happened there. I've been reflecting on what's happening in the Middle East and gay men being thrown off buildings to certain death. And the fact that in certain countries, you let alone, it's not just about being okay to be gay or anything else, that people are dying. And I think we have to realize how privileged and lucky we are to live and work in a country that not only accepts us, it's not about tolerance, as you were saying earlier, it's about inclusivity. And I think it's brilliant that so many people here to share this today. But I think when I was thinking about it as well, there's some comparisons to, I did a master's as a mature student in UCD in equality studies. So you think equality studies, everybody's down with the gays. And I realized that people weren't. They thought there's a level of equality that we should have. So I remember one Irish guy was very against marriage equality, and I found that very difficult. But there was one woman, she was from Central Africa, And I found, when I was reflecting on this, similar to our multi-continental, multi-regional, multicultural, multi-religious and multi-sexuality company, the Masters was quite the same. And this woman was essentially incredibly homophobic based on social and religious beliefs. But she wanted to learn about me. And I decided, yeah, this was going to be my little project for the year. So whenever she wanted to ask me a question, I would, go ahead. And so we had this understanding that, I knew where she was coming from and vice versa. By the end of the year, she left in such a way that she knew I was a good person. She knew I came from a great family. She knew I loved my family. She knew I had a great community of friends. She knew I was a good person and all those things that the beliefs in her country, the belief system, said different. So I was just happy, I think we can do the same here in recognizing that we work with a vast array of people and we shouldn't expect that they will immediately be okay with LGBT people. They may have come from an education system where they're taught that it's not okay to be LGBT. So I think when we're bringing our full selves to work, as Ailbhe said, it's about bringing that honest self to work. And if somebody, does have open and honest questions based on them trying to change their narrative and their beliefs, that you give them that opportunity.
Yeah.
And we might bring that back to Ailbhe as well, because you mentioned in your speech about the use of condescending language, and the other person who's speaking might not understand that they're actually using language that might be offensive. For example, sometimes we'll have managers here who will have questions and just not know how to approach a transgender issue, or not know how to approach somebody that might be LGBT on their teams and how to help them. So, like, what kind of tips or tools or kind of a framework would you give them to try and get them on the journey?
Well, I think, the first step probably is acknowledging that none of us always have the right language for all kinds of situations, and that the best and most honest thing one can do is to ask a question, to say, I'm not sure how you define yourself. Would you like to tell me? And then pick up on that and work from there, and always say, in whatever situation you're in, I don't know, Jen, you'd have a lot of experience in that too. It's better to put your hand up or to ask, better to say, and never assume. Actually, I think that's it. It's not making assumptions about who people are and what they believe, which picks up on several things that Andrew was saying.
And I think that has changed a lot. So, Ailbhe, you talked about your journey over time, and there was a period of time in Dublin where you just did not talk about anything to do with sexuality.
Absolutely.
I mean, you
talk about sex.
Yeah, absolutely. Not in my house anyway. You certainly didn't.
No, not
And I come from a very big family. I'm the youngest of 8. My mother was born in 1924. She raised all of us on her own from the time I was 7 years old, because my father passed away. And we had a very Catholic household. And you did not swear, and you didn't say, oh, Jesus, if you dropped something, or you got a crack.
Yeah.
And she was the most loving mother, but above all, she was very Christian in her approach. So she helped everybody. She helped anybody. It didn't matter who they were. But of course, she had come through an education where you just didn't talk about these things. And she worked in St. James's Hospital at night as a nurse's assistant. She specialised with Hospital 1, which was the HIV patients, which there was so many of through the 80s. And she would work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then I noticed she was going in daytime. And she said some of them are very ill and they don't have anybody, because at this stage, their families did not want to know. They wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. So she'd be making special dishes to bring in because they couldn't eat. And she was with one of the probably more public figures was Vincent Hanley, who was a radio personality. And she was with him. His family were too. He was very well supportive until he passed away, because she just bonded with people. And to me, that told me a lot about, there's certain things in I'm not going to bring up at the kitchen table, right?
Yes.
Because it just wasn't the right time. But also that she just had such a good heart. And I think that's what I learned, maybe there isn't the right time. You don't want to rock the boat sometimes, or you didn't at the time. She's no longer with us today, but I feel if she was, she'd be saying, good on you, get up and go, because I'm going to go to Pride tomorrow and join the team from here. And my 9-year-old is coming, and she is, it's a hoot. She can't wait to get out there. And you will see her. She's planned the whole outfit, everything is going on. But I think it is important to help people along that journey that have come from a different background, come from a different upbringing, a different religious belief, because you just can't expect everybody to be open and on board the way everybody else is.
I kind of feel at this stage of my life, my mother, who died very recently actually, that if I and other members of my family brought her along on the road to more or less accepting multiple sexualities, even in her own family. We can do it with anyone. I mean, I really do actually feel this. And I remember years and years and years ago being on a radio program on Sunday morning about a discussion, and one part of the discussion was about discrimination against gays at work. So of course, you know, I was talking about this and saying, yes, it happens to lesbians, it happens to gays. And that evening I got a phone call from my mother, who had her very, very, very annoyed, disapproving voice. And I knew there was something wrong. I said, what's wrong, Mum? You know, and she said, well, she said, no, it's just I'm having big problems. She said, it was that program this morning. So I said, oh dear, yes, right. What was it? It's that bedroom language, and on a Sunday. So, but it was very revealing, because her whole understanding of what it meant to be lesbian or gay or bi or trans or whatever was, oh, it's about sex. And it taught me a really, really, really important lesson, or it revealed something really important, apart from annoying me like mad, as you can imagine.
And just, I suppose, one last question, maybe for you, Jen, is, so you're, as VP of Ruse, you're also the exec sponsor for the Gayglers in Dublin. So why did you want to take on that role in the first place?
So it's a group at Google that I've always been very interested in. Worked closely in Dubleeds alongside Gareth Morgan, who was the exec sponsor last year. And I thought that it's an amazing group that's achieving a lot and has a lot of outreach across not only Dublin, but all of our sites globally. Being part of the Ruse team, our mission is to provide workspaces and work environments where people can come every day and be at their best. And that's not just about, having a great gym and fantastic food, which you have to have both, because the food is so good, you have to have the gym. But it's just about creating, for me, it's about creating an environment where you can come and be productive and work, but you can be yourself. And so much of what we do in the spaces we provide, it really links into just how people feel at work. So I thought I would love to get an insight and work closely with the group so I can bring the two together and try to help not only with creating programs and supporting the programs that Adam and the rest of the team lead, but wouldn't it be great if we can actually link the space and how we think about the space? And I will say that I've gone through the sessions with Adam where I'm like, what does that mean? And can I say that? And is that word okay? And LGBT, well, can you say the Q? And what the hell is the I and A? And so what am I? And he's been amazing. And he's taken me through the Trans 101 training, which is really, really informative. And that's been a whole new learning for me, because I want to be able, in my Ruse role and in my Google leader role, to be able to support everybody. Now, that doesn't mean as people come to me and ask me a question, I'll be like, no, what do you? It doesn't matter. I just want to have the insights into what makes people happy. Because if you're happy, you're going to feel safe and you're going to be productive. And I think the biggest thing, happy is great, productive is great. The more important thing to me is people feel safe. And not just physically, security-wise safe, but just safe in themselves. I don't send my child to work every day and say, I wonder will she, or to school. She's not working yet.
The truth is out.
The truth is out. But I don't send her to school and say, God, I hope she's really productive today and I hope she's really happy. But safety is the one thing I worry about every day. And that, to me, I want to bring that to work too, because that's very important. You won't be happy or productive if you don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So true.
Thanks very much, everybody. So we'll take questions now from the audience. Anyone want to start? We'll throw the microphone. Thanks, Anna.
Someone at the back.
It's not an Android anymore.
Hello?
So maybe just tell us your name first.
Hi, I'm Pascal. First of all, thanks for the great talk. It was really interesting. Many great thoughts I could take away from it. And I wanted to ask, because you addressed adversity that we face, for years I self-described as a feminist as well, thinking very much like you presented, that it's all about creating a future in which gender does not have an influence on who you're allowed to be. But I dropped that label a couple of years ago because I faced adversity from certain elements within that group, specifically transphobic elements that you sometimes encounter, where it's all about like situations and events that are only for women born as women. And I wanted to ask, have you encountered this, and how did you address this if you did?
Yes, well, it's a very good question. First of all, I mean, feminism is a house of very many mansions right across the world. And there are, of course, there is a whole host of attitudes, and the one you describe is not one that I share at all. I could just speak from the very early experience of organising lesbian lives in UCD back in the very early 1990s, where there was a challenge when a trans woman was in a workshop and was asked to leave, and I was extremely upset and angry about it, and we immediately went to set up actually a meeting with trans people in Dublin. I think that was in 1993. It was a very, very, very long time ago. And after that, Lesbian Lives, I'm just giving this as one example, was absolutely open, and the only workshop that men who identified as men could not attend was the workshop on violence, on interlesbian violence, because it does occur. And it was felt that for the safety and security of the participants, that this would definitely be a woman only, but open to trans women. So, you know, I feel very strongly that there should not be closed doors. I feel very strongly that we should be doing everything in our power to move, and I love being lesbian, but to move beyond those straitjackets of that gender imposes really on all of us, whether we are aware of it or not. So I hope that responds a little bit to your question. And keep going. Keep standing up for yourself there. And let's hope that we can together make that more gender-free world.
Thank you.
We have time for one more question. Nobody? Okay, I think we might finish up there then. And thanks very much to the panel for today, and especially to Ailbhe for her keynote speech. And have a great weekend. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.